Woodcraft, helping you make woodwork.
Oh, well, in that case, he said his shop vac has a 2.5-inch hose. Okay, a lot of the shop...
You got one with the little inch and a quarter or whatever it is.
Yeah. A lot of the shop vacs, since they don't have that 2.5-inch hose, yeah, it works really well. But yeah, one way or the other is you may end up needing to adapt it one way or the other. There's so little of the fittings and accessories that are standard through the whole system that it almost ends up being inevitable that you have to adjust it one way or the other somewhere in there, unfortunately. Some of the other things to go with these is just for ease of use. You know, for a lot of the shop vacs and dust collectors, if you're using a shop vac, you know, you've got a 6 or 7 foot hose and the plug is another 10 feet away. You know, if you're turning your machine on and off all the time, you're constantly walking back to the shop vac, it can get tiring and frustrating and it interrupts your work. One way to do that, to help relieve that, is with a piece like this. This is set up so that anything up to a 1 horse or 1.5 horse motor, you can plug the vac itself in here and the tool into the top port, which works great if the machine and the tool, if the dust collector or shop vac and the tool you're using are relatively close to one another. You can plug them both into one circuit, and when you turn the tool on, it automatically turns the dust collector or the shop vac on. It won't work with any kind of a 2-horse motor. It'll just burn it out. But for the shop vacs, for 1-horse systems, they work pretty well as long as your tool and your vac are relatively close. So.
Make one that will work with a 2-horse?
I haven't ever seen one that works with a 2-horse. I bet somebody out there probably makes it, but I've never actually seen one. These actually I think are an even better idea. Remote control systems for them. If you've got the vac on one side of the room and you've got the tool on the other side of the room, this first idea doesn't work real well. The plugs are too far apart. So if you want to turn your vac or your dust collector on, remote control systems work great. This one is specifically set up for shop vacs. You plug the shop vac into this end. This goes into the wall. This, you either wrap around the hose or you wrap it around your wrist. And in this little pouch right here is a small on-off transmitter. You just click it and it turns the vac on. Now you don't have to go back and find the vac, go over to the wall, find the plug, any of that. It's right there. It's right there at the end of the hose. And they make them so that they sit on a couple of different frequencies so that you can have multiples set up around the shop. Now I can't get it back into its little... No. So yeah, very easy, very convenient. It always keeps the on-off switch right next to you. And like I said, this one is set up specifically for shop vacs. It doesn't have the amperage guard in there. It won't handle the amperage from a 1-horse motor. You know, it's really only meant for a shop vac. Anything more than about 10 amps and it'll fry. For the larger machines, they make remote systems as well. This one will do up to a 1.5 horse. They also make them for 220. These come with a little remote. These things work up to 40, 50 feet away. And if you're like a lot of, like some shops, you put your dust collector in the other room so that you don't have to hear it whining constantly while you're working. These work through the wall. You can plug this in the other room and turn this on from the opposite end of your shop through the wall, no problem.
Does others work through the wall?
That one will not, no. It is meant to be basically in the same room. And since it really only works with a shop vac, most shop vacs, if you have them in another room, by the time the airflow gets to the end of the hose, you've lost most of your suction. So yep, 110 versions, 220 versions, all available. Very handy. And when you're working with shop vacs, when you're working with the one-horse units, one-horse dust collectors, a lot of times it's one tool at a time. You're dragging it along behind you. You're working on just one tool at a time. For a lot of folks, if you're doing a one-horse dust collector, that means you've got a hose coming off your dust collector. Hopefully, you're going to go to a separator because they make these for the 4-inch systems. Oneida also makes a larger version that works great for 4-inch systems. But you're still changing your hose from one machine to the next. It gets tiring and annoying to switch the hose clamps all the time. So a fitting like this, which is flared on the end, works great. You run your hose up onto the end of it, lock it down with a hose clamp, and now you've got a fitting that will just set tight right over any 4-inch port. They make them for 4-inch, they make them for 2.5. Now you've got a fast, easy way to just switch from one to the other. If you have the 1.5 or 2 or God forbid 5 and 7 horse units, you're probably working in a cabinet shop if you've got those guys, but those tend to be a hard-piped system. You're dealing with a system where all of the gates, all of the vents are in a specific place, the tools are in a specific place, you're not doing a lot of moving around. But you still have to get the dust from the tool to the machine. And in doing that, you're either using PVC, waste vent pipe, or metal pipe. Now, when you're using the plastic pipes, you're always dealing with an issue of static. Air moving through these, dust moving through these, it always generates static. With metal pipe, you don't have that concern. It's also smoother. You lose less airflow through a metal pipe. Tends to be a little more expensive, but if you're going to put it in and do it, the best you can, metal works the best. It also works best to keep the diameter of these as large as possible for as long as possible. Most 1.5 horse, 2 horse machines, they come with a splitter on them to go down to 4-inch. Well, and guess what? That means you've just choked off your airflow right there at the machine. If you pull that splitter off, take a 6-inch pipe off of there, run 6-inch pipe up to a Y or a T, go along your walls that way, and then when you get to your machines where you really need those gates, where you really need those fittings, then go to a 4-inch. You have just increased the airflow and you've just increased the efficiency of your machine. When you inevitably have to change direction, a T-junction is the worst thing to put in place. When the airflow has to make that 90-degree turn, it loses suction. You will cut the airflow 20-30% or more in a T-junction. Better way to go is with an angle. 45, you don't lose nearly as much airflow through there. It's not bouncing off walls as badly. Unfortunately, a lot of times if you're trying to make a corner, most fittings come as a 90-degree elbow. If you can find a couple of 45-degree elbows, they work even better. It ends up costing you a little more because you're having to join a bunch of pieces together, but they still work better. And blast gates. No matter how big a dust collector you're using, every open section of pipe is costing you suction. The more gates, the more you can control the airflow through the system, the better the system will work. If you're running 2 and 3 machines at once, you have to be able to control the air to those couple of systems. You do not want a hard piped system where everything is open all the time. You will have no suction whatsoever. So blast gates, blast gates, blast gates. Every time you think you want one, put one in there. It will help you immeasurably. Then thank you all for hanging out with us, and y'all have a great day.